Hello. I recently commented on a post where it'd been brought back up by the media, I believe. Last year, I think it was last season, it commented about Kalvin Phillips saying that he couldn't play because he was too fat. And for some reason, it came back up in the media. And anyway, I got involved in the comments section, and I found it incredibly interesting that I have several opinions about it, really, and there's some that I'm not too diehard about, and others it's like, no, there's no excuse. So there seems to be this general consensus that Pep, well, not general consensus, but there is a consensus that Pep was out of order for saying it publicly. Whereas I hold the opinion that it's a public profile job where if you don't get selected, or at least the manager is always going to be asked about the selection of his team. And when it comes to Man City, arguably the best team in the Premier League for the last few years, won the Champions League last season. It's probably one of the highest profile, if not the highest profile club in the country. And if you play for that club, the idea that you might slip under the radar, no. The media are constantly fixated, focused on clubs like Man City, and Liverpool, and Arsenal, and Man United. There is, there are a few clubs out there that are just under constant scrutiny, where people are looking to make stories without there even being a story. And Man City definitely falls under that. And so, for my opinion, as if you play for that club, you will understand that club. You will know what's expected from that club. Can't imagine for 1 second if you play under Pep, you don't know what he expects from you. And his standards must be phenomenal. And you always hear about players, Rio Ferdinand and Vidic were talking about it on a podcast recently, where they talked about how when they first turned up at Man United, the standards that they walked into, they were like, oh, this is another level. And I can't imagine Pep, arguably one of the greatest managers, certainly the greatest manager of his generation, that's certainly in there with them, doesn't have these standards. And I'd imagine when you walk into one of his clubs from another club, that's probably one of the first things you're going to notice. And but there is this strange debate going online about it, and where everyone is upset that he said that he was fat publicly. Whereas, like I said, why should he lie? Why wouldn't he just say he's too fat, he's not fit? And why, as a player, would you expect him to cover for you if you know that's his feelings? So, but I'm open to the idea. I can see where people are coming from, that he didn't have to say it publicly. He could have just said he was injured, etc., etc. That's not my cup of tea. I'd rather, as an individual, well, I'd rather not be in that position. And every time I asked somebody who defended the the idea that Pep is wrong, he shouldn't have said it publicly. When I asked them, but do you think, as a professional athlete, that Kalvin Phillips let himself down and let the club down, or wasn't aware of the standards? No reply. And there's this thing that just happens in today's world where everybody is exempt from their own behavior. It's not my fault, it's your fault for calling me out on my standards. It's not my fault that I wasn't fit enough. If you are a professional athlete, and I'm not, and I've never played professional football, but I can't imagine, especially when you hear all of the former players, all the retired players, talk about the expectation. Ben Foster, a former Man United goalkeeper, talked about the fact that he was relieved when he left Man United. I think it was for Birmingham, because the standard that he had to maintain 24/7. He said it was just too much and football wasn't fun anymore. And I can imagine if you are the same as Ben Foster, that you turn up at Man City and be like, this isn't for me. And maybe that's what happened to Calvin Phillips. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I'm just quite fascinated and a little surprised that everyone is like, no, Pep is out of order, and nobody would come back at me about why it's acceptable for Kalvin Phillips to not be at the fitness standards that Pep would expect him to be. And I guess that's also why I'm making this YouTube video, because I'm interested in why will they defend that, don't talk about it publicly and passionately. And there were some really valid arguments which swayed me to the point, okay, we can agree to disagree, sorry. But I still hold my opinion that if you're in that role, you know what's expected. But people are like, well, HR said that to me. If somebody said that to me publicly, called me out in front of the team, I'd be straight to HR and have their job. Yeah, but unless you're a professional athlete, yeah. Unless you're a professional athlete, what is expected of you? Surely to be fit enough to do the job. I'm expected to turn up and do my job every day. No one's going to excuse me if I turn up stinking hangover, whatever. And I'm not suggesting he was drinking, but you know, there isn't. My job doesn't require me to be at a high physical level of fitness like it would if I play for Manchester City. So yeah, I'm interested. Why do so many people today accept? It's just the way that they always dunt the problem over to the person that's called out the accountability. Why is Kalvin Phillips not accountable for the position he put himself in? And that's my question. I want to know why he's not accountable. Because I think as a professional athlete, I think in life, you have to be accountable for where you are and what you do. And one of the things I find problematic in this day and age is that people don't want to be accountable for their own lives and the circumstances that they could have controlled and the circumstances they've got themselves into. Let me know your thoughts.